Welcome back to the metaverse. Today we have Kyle Smith, who is a clarity consultant and also a developer of a practice called NLSE. That's short for Neuro Linguistic Somatic Experience. And I'm sure Kyle's going to go more dive into what that means because I've never heard of it before. I've heard of NLP, which might be similar, Neuro Linguistic Programming. Not sure what that is. But Kyle, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to learn more about what NLSE for short is and how you got into developing it. And let's just start off with a little background of yourself, Kyle.
Sure. Thank you for having me, dude. And background for myself. Overall, my personal lore, my story is turning my problems into passions. Where in 2016, I was not the person that I wanted to be. I was not making the decisions I wanted to, and I was indecisive. I didn't have much respect for myself. There was no little compassion. Didn't trust my competence, and so I didn't have much confidence. And eventually, this seeped out into my relationships, and it also just accumulated over time. I didn't have an outlet, so that it just kept on building and building and building. And then by chance, rather than choice, it was just a moment where I just did not want to be that way anymore, and I saw myself having a different future than what I was anticipating. And then I just started exploring to see how I could work on myself and develop myself. And so I made a one of those help me out posts. It was really one. I didn't care what it was. I asked for counseling, therapy, uh, words of advice, wisdom, like anything. And so made the decision and really dove in to see what could work. And over this time, the two things that worked the most prominently, was diving into the words, the stories, and the breath. And so we got breath work and then we got story work. And then both of those put together is NLSE. So it's a hybridization. It's two practices that I put together so that it could get the mind and it could get the body working together as a dance. So it's not just mental, it's not just physical, it's a nice interweaving between the two. And so the reason why I developed this is because these are the two things that help me the most, and I still practice it. Like I have pen and papers all around me. I carry a little notebook in my back in my jacket, even if I have a phone. And by being able to go to the source, going to our words, going to our stories, going into our breath, where I've been able to change it, then I'd be able to teach other people how to change their state of being, and then it's just been a really cool avalanche of neat experiences.
So it's a hybrid of breath work and story work. So what does story work mean? Is that a part of like writing down daily journal practice, or is it something else?
Uh, I would say it's something else because when we're doing a daily journal practice, that could be, uh, and it could still work together. I don't think it's necessary to have it as a daily practice. People can absolutely do it because they could have their wins at the end of the day, and then they can write a story about the win that they had that day. So the story work is, well, working the stories, and the stories are memories, moments in time, dreams. They could be stories that keep us stuck in the suck. There are stories that celebrate us and others, and then stories can also contribute to how inspired and action prone we are to pursuing our goals. And so those are the three main kind of areas that I help with folks the most. And going into the stories being like a memory, it could be, if it's getting unstuck, it could be a memory that hurts, haunts, taunts, or annoys, and then writing that story out. Could be celebrating the progress of the last 100 days or the last year, then that's writing that story out, and then writing the story of what you want to accomplish. And so there's a practice behind the story aspect. So it would be different because you're putting it conversationally. You're writing the story as you see it rather than how you feel it. So as to pull
Okay.
you out of the stories.
Because usually when I do like new moon practices or any type of stuff like that, It requires you to be a lot into your feeling. It's like kind of the opposite of pulling yourself away from the story or out of the story. It's like manifest. That's a manifesting technique, but it's totally different.
Well, I think I don't think it's that different because it's the intention behind what we're manifesting. Because we could be manifesting good things, we could be manifesting negative things too.
Hmm.
So it could work in I think in both cases where it flows that way, because it's our stories that we write down, and then we attribute a meaning to that story, and then we have a feeling as a side effect of our meaning to that story.
That makes
That makes
sense.
sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah, cool.
It just like takes a while to connect these dots, but
Yeah, no, that's totally legit. Totally legit.
yeah.
I
So when like before you discovered the modality that you is it called a modality you would call it, or is it
would call it a practice. A
practice?
practice.
Okay, NLSE,
Yep.
Neuro Linguistic Somatic Experience. What did you were you introduced to breath work before? Did you do like how, when what age were you when you like what year was that?
Work would have been anywhere from 10 to 11 years ago. So that's a practice that's been consistent. I did a couple sessions of breath work today because get to have a solid chunk of conversations. So I'll do a breath session between, and it's like primed.
Yeah.
So that's something that's been a practice that I have been able to see a lot of consistent progress with in a couple different ways. Where even just the practicing, where when I first started, there's a really like whoo, like I was really getting like up there, and then over time I've just become more used to it, and now it's become just a practice where I just adjust. So that I've had for a solid chunk of time, and then the story work part was in the last 3 years, where I started learning it, teaching it, construct, and yeah, learning it because I went through a certification for that one because this is a practice. Whereas just goes into the story work, and so after having that one, after going through their level one, level two, then I saw the value in putting these two together to be able to get the body involved with the mind as well. And then when we're writing the stories as well, there's a breathe and read component. So we're breathing as we're in between reads. So we're really moving the feels and the stories around. So we can still like take meaningful stories like what you were saying and write down the story. And it's interesting because it's the same frame. And I'm totally fine with sharing it. I don't have, there's no like, oh my God, you have to work with me to get it.
Hmm.
If you do it, you have to let me know how it goes. Um, so it's interesting because it's the same 4 step process. However, with ouchie stories that hurt, it creates distance, and the stories that are meaningful to us that have a lot of positive meaning, they actually come closer. So same practice for two different effects. If we want to celebrate, it brings those feelings up and close to us. If we want to get unstuck, it processes the feelings and allows us to create distance from the story.
All right. Yeah, distance and processing. Like I had a question about how like what's the pros of doing this? Like what like is it going to help with your mindset? Is it going to help with what's going to help with?
It definitely helps with mindset. So I call NLSE the mindset gym for mental fitness. And so that could be if someone's in the stuck and coming out of there, then that'll help with them. And then if someone is solid and they're unsure of where to go, so they're having their maybe like an identity crisis. I finished this, it was my thing for so long. Now I don't know what to do. I help people in that area as well. And the main thing that all of them have in common is that they have a sincere desire to make changes. They have an openness and a curiosity to explore, and they have a willingness to test their pain threshold or their comfort zone to step into their capacity zone. And
Yeah.
so those are the components that I help with. And it's really what it really is helping people think about their thinking to get themselves out of their own way.
Yeah, cuz when we're repeating different patterns and we're not thinking of these patterns and then it kind of like puts us into a different state of mind, I guess.
Exactly, exactly. And then something that's interesting is we'll have about 60,000 to 80,000 habitual thoughts per day. So these are 60,000 thoughts we had yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before. And so if those habitual thoughts are harming us rather than helping us, then that's not working in our favor. We're working against ourselves.
See, I haven't practiced that much breath work because the breath work that I've been introduced to is a lot of like fast breathing. I don't know if
Sure.
that's what all the most breath work is like fast breathing, but like where it kind of like puts you in like kind of a hyperventilative state where you're like really trying to explore the higher
Out
kind
there.
of
You're getting
conscious.
high off your own supply of oxygen.
Yeah, but since I had a history of a heart ablation, I it's probably safer for me to stay away from that type of practice
That
unless
type.
yeah.
I would say that type because the way that I think of breath work as well is that breath work is an umbrella term for a variety of different tools or breath tempos to inspire a desired state of change. So, for example, with like what you were talking about, where it's uh, heavier, like intense breathing, that one's definitely like where you want to go flying. Like you want to
Yeah.
feel your whole body. You want to feel the tingles. You want to feel like the breath retention when you just relax into it. And then there's other ones where you can have a conscious breathing or yeah, just conscious or heart coherence breathing, where you can do in through the mouth, out through the mouth, 6 seconds in, slow, 6 seconds out, and then you can expand it to be like 10 seconds in, 6 second hold, 16 seconds out. And so that one puts you in a nice calming state. And then the opposite, where that's a down regulation, up regulation would be like breath of fire, where you're going through your nose, you're like, and you're going like quick and you're trying to upregulate. So I think
Okay.
breath work is there's a variety of different tools, and it's what do you want on the other side of that? Do you want to feel chill? Do you want to feel excited? Do you want to feel whatever it is? And then it's picking the right tool for the right thing. Because a hammer is a great tool when you're building something. And if you have the hammer in the line of the DMV and you're using it as a cell phone, that's not a good vibe. That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was reading a little bit about how this practice can eliminate limiting beliefs and victim mentality.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
how do we go about doing that?
Sure. I'll start with defining the victim mentality so that peeps know who we're talking about and what we're talking about. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait in which a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of other people's actions, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. So you know how we were talking earlier about how our thoughts can be habitual? The victim mentality, like the victor mentality, the contrast, the polarity opposite, they both depend on habitual thought processes. And when someone can identify when they are in a state of woe's me, or they're pointing the finger at everyone while forgetting that they have three fingers pointed at themselves, the victim mentality is a state of being where we close ourselves in. We don't allow ourselves to be authentic and pursue the things we want to do. And oftentimes the victim mentality is like a little a little cardigan of comfort, and we pull our identity from a story that hurts, haunts, and taunts, and we may have been a victim in the moment of. However, what is maintained past that point, in my opinion, it's in our best interest to intervene so we don't keep that mentality up. And so the victim mentality is being able to contrast and show people that their negative narratives are false. And the time when folks would struggle with this is when they have when they still see themselves as in that story, even if it's been 20 years later.
Hmm.
When people are so ingrained in that, there's something where they could have a cognitive dissonance where the possibility of having happiness is frightening because they're so comfortable in their anger.
Yeah, I kind of want to give an example of like a victim mentality mindset. Is like, for example, say you're playing any sport or like just like for this example, like horse races, and you're a jockey and you're doing a horse race, and then you get like bumped and your horse falls, and then you're in the moment you're a victim. But then if you let that affect you years down the road, and you're still in that victim mindset, it's not helping you at all. You got to get back on that horse. You got to keep trying. You got to now have that belief where you got to now have more proof that you're worthy of it, and even though you know you already are.
Absolutely. I'm also going to totally steal that horse jockey reference because there's a couple cool examples that I hear over time, and that one was real good. When you said horse racing, I was like, I don't even remember the last time I've heard someone use horse racing in an example, and I'm
Yeah,
pumped for this, and that was great. I'm gonna steal it.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, because
Sweet.
I actually have like the secretariat poster on on my wall upstairs. It's my father's, but yeah.
Oh, cool. Nice.
But I think that horse won the Triple Crown. I'm not sure. Yeah, so I have a question for you because about language and like how does language shape our reality? I know, like, because you I was reading the notes, so
Nice. Uh, Language shapes our reality through the magic of spelling. In short, this is always fun part to talk about because the way that I break down words is they are macronutrients of the mind. They're the invisible, ethereal macronutrients of the mind. So a macronutrient for our body is carbs, fats, and proteins. And I was a personal trainer for 13 years before this, so I have a lot of fitness references.
mhm.
And so the carbs, fats, and proteins, the quality of it that we consume is going to influence and inspire the quality of the body that we walk around in. When we take the same frame and use words as the building blocks of mindset, words being the ethereal macronutrients of the mind, when we feed our mind quality words, we are going to have quality thoughts. When we feed our mind shit words, we're going to have shit thoughts. And so when we're mindful of the words and the stories and how it impacts our breathing, those three things I always go back to, then what happens is we're going to be able to recognize changes in how we frame and see the objective reality. We become more objectively aware of our subjective existence. And what happens is we see things as they are, not how we believe they should be. We see things how they can be rather than we expect them to be and not do anything about it. And so the language is huge with this one. And a fun one as well, when we're thinking of magical words, there's abracadabra.
Yeah.
And with abracadabra, most folks think of a rabbit being pulled out of a hat. They'll think of the Pokemon.
Mhm.
I had someone say Steve Miller Band, and those are all accurate. Abracadabra, the word itself is Aramaic. It's an old language. It's Jesus spoke it for a reference on time.
Yeah.
And translated to English, it's with my words I create, with my words I influence. So language and the words we speak are of great influence on creating our reality. So the better the words that we direct and we're intentional with, the easier it is for us to get our body to follow along because there's no emotional resistance to it.
Could you imagine a baby just the first words they say is abracadabra?
Bro, dude, I never even thought of that. And whoa, that is another thought. If that was the first words, I would be like, this is Merlin reincarnated.
That would be bizarre.
Oh man, that'd be gnarly.
Yeah, so
I'm not sure if I'd be freaked out or pumped.
probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, what is the biggest lesson you learned from this technique or just in general?
from this technique in particular, actually, I'll go with in general. No, yeah, I'll go in general, and then I'll go with this technique. So
Okay.
in general, this is my personal like overall lessons I've just over time popped up, and the lesson is that there is no way to avoid the work. And if the goal is to avoid the work, excuse me,
That's you.
to avoid the work or to do what you can to get out of doing the work, there's always going to be a part where the person themselves, me, myself, is going to have to get involved. And the more I put off putting in the work, the slower I'm going to get what I want. And the place that I'm at now will stay the same, which is not bad. I really dig where I'm at. Like I love like things are solid. However, why not go for more? And so the work is always going to be required. And when you're certain about the work that you're doing by actually participating in it and course correcting and making pivots along the way, then life's going to be a lot easier. And that's like my projection as a reflection.
Yeah,
And
I
then go ahead.
I have an issue with avoiding the work. And I need to
Bro,
work on that.
that's that's totally legit. And I kid you not, mine's very similar where if I don't do it, like if I don't go out and like interact with human beings like in person,
Hmm.
then I'll just hang out on my computer, either on like chats like this, or I'll just be working. And so it's like, and it's winter time up here now. So it's,
Yeah.
what is it now? It's like minus 22 Celsius
Wow, over
here.
there. Wow.
So my step count has decreased a lot. I'll tell you that right now. Very little less steps.
There's
And
snow
so,
there?
oh yeah, we got it this week.
Okay.
This week was the pour down. And it's honestly like we had a couple like 2, 3 days in the last
Hmm.
7 where it's been really like sunny. Outside of that, it's just been cloud going. It's nuts. Um, so yeah, if I don't schedule breaks and time to hang out with people, then those are things that, and even eat sometimes. When if I'm really in
Hmm.
it, I won't even eat, man. I'll just be like, I'm freaking zoned in. I don't want to interfere with this like flow.
Yeah, I have people who get in such a mindset of work, like a working mindset, that they don't
Mhm.
eat and they forget, and it's like you have to put schedule time, delegate some time for balance, because you're gonna it's gonna burn you out after a while.
Totally, totally. Yeah, legit. And then the second part, what have I learned from this practice? Ooh, you know what I learned from this practice, and this is like this feels really good to say out loud, is that, and it's interesting because I don't want to, because I do it as well as teach it. I do think I have like where I'm saying something, it is a projection of experience as well as what I've seen. And the thing that I recognize the most is that the turnover time for getting through stories and feeling good about someone, like themselves, about myself, about themselves, is fast. People feel better about themselves really quick. And I get messages the next day where they're like, oh man, like this thing just happened. And it was like, it all lined up, and could be whatever the example is. And it could have done, or it could have had something to do with the theme that we were talking about in the session. And so my intention with the sessions is to collect as many aha moments as possible. So people have pattern interrupts. They think about things differently quicker, and then they're able to really bring out the stuff that they want to talk about and what they want to pursue once they get through that chunk. And so the turnover has been really cool. It's been really quick. It's like it's been really fulfilling, and the how quickly it is has been a surprising lesson.
That's
It's
great.
actually got me to mold some things differently. Where I used to think weekly sessions would have been good. Minimum effective dose is biweekly, and in those 2 weeks, it's an integration period. And so people that are going through the session, we have that 2 week period or that 1 week period to be able to integrate what we've learned from the session itself. So it's freaking so cool.
And if people want to get some NLSE from you to practice, how what are the packages like?
The way I have them organized right now is I have community sessions. So those ones are community events where they're just pro bono. I just want to give the opportunity for folks to see what it's like and experience it for themselves. And then I have things broken up into a 16-week, 26-week, and 52-week setup. And so
Wow,
each phase, the way it's broken up, and some people can move quicker and slower as well. These are just an overall run through. And so the first phase is getting unstuck and like removing those stories that hurt, haunt, and taunt to the best of our ability. Once people feel better about themselves, then we actively look at the celebrating the wins. We look at how we've progressed and accomplished goals, and then we visit the things that are from the past or even from the near present or near past that have been really impactful, as well as future framing into what they want to experience in the future. And then past that point, then it's going into the last 6 months because it's 6 months where it's like get unstuck, then it goes to the celebrate the wins, and then the final 6 months is focused around goal setting, creating a story that inspires action proneness, and then we implement a plan to be able to get things done in a shorter duration of time. And so I like to aim to have two 90-minute segments in the last 6 months where people are focused on a quote unquote impossible goal to be able to crush it. Mhm.
that's great. I like that. That's a lot of weeks. Like 6 months. Like that's a lot. There's a lot of dedication.
I would actually want to, I would, the thing with it is my intention is for people to not have to work with me for the rest of their life.
Mhm.
And so if one person spends 1 year with me, that's a lifetime of progress that I get to see. I no longer need to be there. And I'm just a bonus at that point because they've dialed themselves into such a degree. So it's pretty sweet.
Awesome. Uh, okay, so I have one last question here, and then I'll let you like end with whatever you want to share. Um, and the question's pretty much the same as the last question, but a little bit different. What's the best piece of advice you can share with the world?
Oh man, the best piece of advice that I could share with the world is a pretty good vibe one. It's my own little mantra one. So it's the mantra that I think of when I want to be a certain way. And the mantra is keep up the kindness. And when I think of kindness, I don't think of kindness as a feeling or an emotion. Uh, it's something that is embodied. I believe that people recognize when kindness is happening. And because it's something that we can recognize, it's something that we can choose to embody. And I believe that by keeping up the kindness, it's being able to say, I'd hope, I would hope, I could hope, rather than saying something more pessimistic. If they unless they want to be a pessimist, then that's totally cool. I don't think they'll get much done, to be blunt. However, I think that when we get to choose to keep up the kindness and we give that kindness to others, that kindness is going to be reciprocated to us. So oftentimes, it's the very thing the very thing we want is a matter of giving it. So if we want kindness, we give kindness. We want love, we give love. Want compassion, give compassion. We want to be, uh, we want to not be judged. We do not judge. And so when we can think of what the embodiment of what it is, what we want, and in this case, keep up the kindness, then it's easier to step into it and feel good about it.
I like that. That's a great mantra, and
It's been
pretty
serving me
simple.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. So to end off, is there anything that we haven't covered that we can dive into that you would like to shine a light on?
Ooh, let's see. Do you have a direction that you'd want to go? Because my brain's going a couple different places. That's pretty open ended.
You can give me some examples, and I'll roll with it.
Okay, fair enough. Nothing's coming to mind at the moment.
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
It's all good.
That's all good. But where can people find you? Where can people get your course or socials you can share?
Uh, if they want to learn more about, well, anything having to do with what I talked about, clarityconsultant.ca. That's
Hmm.
the website. And then my socials are Dapper Dude Kyle, DAPPERDUDEKYLE. And if you want to have a conversation, Instagram, I have the fastest response time there.
All right. Yeah, I just followed you on Instagram on the podcast channel. So
Likewise,
yeah, that's great. Yeah, so stick around and we'll chat. But that's the end of the podcast today. A short one today, but I enjoyed it still. Doesn't have to be long to get the point across. But anyway, see you guys later. Bye.
have a good one.